Michael will be sharing with us his hobby for the past 12 years. Michael enjoys home brewing ales, and he enjoys sharing these tasty rewards with his friends and his family. This afternoon we're going to get an introduction to home brewing, a brown ale. This evening, Michael will be brewing this brown ale in his home, and he wishes to invite everybody interested to observe the brewing process. Introduction to Home Brewing Part 1, Michael Bassett. Michael Bassett, Introduction to Home Brewing Part 1.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. As the introduction said, today is all about home brewing. We give you some of the ideas of ingredients and materials needed. And this afternoon, starting about 6 o'clock in my home, I'm going to be brewing this ale. Anybody that would like to come is more than invited to show up and go through the experience with me. Tonight, I will be brewing a brown ale from a recipe that I picked from Charlie Papazian's book, The New Joy of Home Brewing. And the name of this ale is Ebro Yurtki Brown Ale. And I've chosen this one because it's an easy one. There's not a lot of ingredients in it, so the cost is low. And it matures quickly. In 2 weeks, I'll be enjoying a nice home-brewed brown ale. So last night I went to the homebrew store here in town and purchased my ingredients, and I spent a total of $33.70. This 5-gallon batch will make about 2 cases, a little over 2 cases of beer, if bottled in regular 12-ounce beer bottles. The only thing I'm missing off of my cost there is the water, and I'm going to go purchase that today. I prefer to use spring water rather than tap water. But anyway, today, with this recipe, besides water, I'll be using 6 pounds of pale malt extract, which is pretty much the basis of it. Added to that, because we're using the 4 ingredients, malt. This is a crystal malt, which is a number 40, which don't even worry about that. And a black patent malt. And all these malts are named in the way that they are processed. And they have different things that produce different qualities of the beer. Besides this, I've also bought 4 ounces of hops, processed hops, which I would recommend if you're going to use. And my other item, which I'm keeping on ice, is a vial of Burton Ale yeast. And this is probably the most pricey ingredient, but I can reuse this yeast. I can capture the yeast after the initial fermentation and use it in another yeast, or use it in another brew. The final ingredient that I needed to purchase is corn sugar, and this is for priming because we need to get that fizz back in, because I'm not shooting carbon dioxide into the bottles the way that a normal brewer would. Some of the materials, or some of the equipment that you'll need to brew beer is, number 1, a very large stock pot. And I use about a 20-quart stock pot so that I have lots of room in there for the boil. I'm not going to do all 5 gallons in it, but you want something large enough that you can get as much in there as you can, because all these ingredients are going in along with a few gallons of water. A spoon. You also need a spoon for stirring the wort, which is what we call the mixture as we're brewing it. Next, you'll need kitchen colander to catch all the solids as they leave as they leave the wort when we're getting ready to put it into the fermentation vat. And then the fermentation vat that I use, and I would suggest this if you're going to try home brewing yourself rather than having to go out and buy some real expensive equipment, because I'm trying to keep this as inexpensive as I can. I went to Safeway and talked the bakery out of about 4 of these 3-gallon buckets that they use for German chocolate icing. And you want to make sure you get the lid and the gasket that fits into the lid. You've noticed I've cut a hole here in the lid because when the beer is fermenting, the yeast do the fermentation process. They eat the sugar, and the byproducts of the yeast eating this sugar is number 1, alcohol, and number 2, gas. And so we had to have room for that gas to bubble off. So I've cut a hole in here, and I put a cork in there that has a small hole drilled in it. And then I use a bubbler. And I put a little bit of water in here, and as the gas gets in there, it pushes the bubbler up and it'll bubble. And after about a day, it'll just start going bloop, 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 bloop. And when we get down to about 1 bloop per minute, then it's time to bottle. And this fits right in there. And I put that in the bathtub and let it ferment. So tonight what I'll be doing is, first off, bringing my specialty grains almost to a boil and letting them steep. And I've chosen these grains on this recipe to get the nice dark color of a brown ale. And then the crystal gives the qualities for head retention, head color, some body thickness to the beer that I want to add into the starting point. Then at the end, after the, back up a second, while we're boiling, be adding hops in 3 segments. First segment is to kill the sweetness of the sugar, that's all this is right here is sugar. Want to kill some of that sweetness. And then the second one comes near the end. Near the end, I'll put some in for flavoring. And then almost at the end, the last few minutes, I'll put some more in, and that's the nose, or the smell. Especially if you've had an IPA and you've sniffed that IPA, that's the hops that you're smelling. Once the wort has cooled, because we want to cool this as quickly as possible, preferably within about a half an hour, pour it into my 2 fermentation vats and pitch the yeast, or pour the yeast in, and then let it start. That'll be the first part of it. In about a week, I'll put it into bottles along with a little bit of corn sugar to restart the yeast. And in 2 weeks, we'll have a nice, tasty brown ale.
Thank you very much, Michael. Please.
By the way, if anybody does want to come over tonight while I am brewing, about 6 o'clock, just let me know after the meeting so I know how many people to plan for.